My uncle left me a sealed envelope when he died. My mother tried to burn it before I could read what was inside. Everyone in our family agreed on one thing growing up. My uncle was difficult, cold, my mother called him, judgmental, the kind of man who found fault in everything and everyone. I heard it so many times it stopped being an opinion and became a fact, like the color of the sky. I grew up believing my uncle didn't really love anyone, least of all me. He lived 4 hours away, in the same narrow house he and my mother grew up in. We visited maybe twice a year, and those visits were tense in a way I could feel but couldn't name. My mother would go rigid the second we pulled into the driveway. My uncle would stand in the doorway with his arms crossed, and dinner would be quiet, and we'd leave early. On the drive home, my mother would exhale like she'd been holding her breath the whole time and say, "Now you see what I grew up next to," so I kept my distance. When my uncle called, I let it ring. When he sent letters, actual handwritten letters on thin blue paper, I skimmed them and shoved them in a drawer. Once, when I was 16, he asked if I wanted to come stay for a week over the summer, just the two of us. I told him I had plans. I didn't have plans. I just didn't want to be alone with a man I'd been taught to be wary of. He wrote me one more time after that. I didn't answer it. I'm not sure I even opened it. He died when I was 19, a heart attack, fast, in the kitchen of that same narrow house. At the funeral, my mother cried in a way that confused me. Big heaving sobs that didn't match the man she'd described for 2 decades. I stood there dry-eyed and guilty about being dry-eyed. A week later, the lawyer handling his small estate mailed a box of his things to our house. Inside, among the old photo albums and a worn watch, was a sealed envelope with my name on the front in his shaky handwriting. I never got to open it that day. My mother took it. She said she'd hold on to it, that I didn't need to deal with all that right now, and I let her because I didn't understand yet that it mattered. 2 nights later, I came downstairs for water and found her at the kitchen sink with the envelope in one hand and a lighter in the other. One corner was already catching. I don't remember crossing the room. I just remember grabbing it, patting out the flame against my jeans, and staring at her while she stared back with an expression I'd never seen on her before. Not anger, fear. I took the envelope to my room and locked the door and read it. It was 6 pages. My uncle wrote that he had loved me from the day I was born, and that he had spent my whole childhood watching me be turned away from him, a little more each year, and never knowing how to stop it. He wrote that the distance between him and my mother wasn't what I'd been told, that years ago he'd refused to co-sign a loan for something he believed was reckless, and my mother had never forgiven him, and had slowly, carefully made sure I grew up seeing my uncle the way a stranger would. He said he didn't write this to turn me against my mom. He just didn't want to die with me believing he'd never wanted me. The last page was a list. Every school event he'd asked to attend and been told no. Every birthday card he'd mailed. The summer week he'd hoped for. He'd kept track of all of it, not out of bitterness, but the way you hold on to the few things you're allowed to keep. I sat on my floor and cried for a man I'd been convinced didn't have a warm bone in his body. The next morning I asked my mother the truth, not her version, what actually happened. She started with the old lines, difficult, cold, judgmental, and I told her I'd read the letter, and I watched the story fall apart in her face. She was quiet a long time. Then she said, "It was more complicated than I let you believe." It was the first honest thing she'd said about her brother in my entire life. I drove to that narrow house before the family sold it. I sat on the front step where he used to stand with his arms crossed, and I understood too late that crossed arms can also mean someone bracing to be hurt. I keep the letter in a frame now. I couldn't save the relationship, but I could stop letting someone else write the ending.